Hi everyone, welcome to this session. Thank you for joining in. I'm Tanya. I work with the marketing team at Pepper, and I'm here to host this session alongside. So, this is a fireside chat, and it's about the talent in the creative industry. I think one of the very key things that we all are excited to discuss. We have Emmanuel Upputuru with us. So, over to you, Gaurav. Conversation.
Hi, Manuel. Welcome for the sessions. Uh, after the great introduction, thanks, Tanya. Let's dive deep into gaining some more insights from you. So, to start with, there's a lot of chatter about skills, required by the creatives in the field. So, what are the key skill sets, required to make a difference in the creative field?
Okay. Uh, Creative field itself is a very massive field. It's very difficult to even define what that field is about because to begin with, creative field also encompasses both commercial and like pure art, like sculpting and painting and installation art, performance arts, and all that kind of stuff that does not include brand. So I think from that is obviously not what we're discussing today. We have marketing and brands involved, so we're discussing the other side of creativity. But from the perspective of mindset, from the perspective of what your worldviews are, it is the same stream that sort of brings out these people into the marketing world. So you have the same kind of DNA or blood system where you start thinking of creativity. It's the same term used for both fields, right? So therefore, that's the sort of the field that we have. So obviously, talent. If you are a writer, or if you're a designer, if you are a cameraman, or if you are a designer, or somebody who can make social media posts and gifs and all that kind of stuff is required. And I think there are other speakers who might touch upon them, talk about it, bring case studies and all. Today, I wanted to talk about a very human side of talent, and I think that's sort of it. It is very close to my heart, and a lot of it, the chatter that you mentioned, bothers me personally. So that I thought I picked this subject for me to talk about. It's not the work, but it is the people behind the work, and their passions and struggles and all. So you're talking about the kind of skill sets. So I think the number one skill set that I look at when I look meet people and I talk to the people is not about the work itself. The work could be bad, ugly, brilliant, edgy, and all that kind of stuff. And that obviously I'm passionate about that. Is that do you have hunger? Is hunger? Do I see hunger in your eyes? Do you want to make a difference? Is the key? Because the question said skill sets to make a difference in the creative field. So
Right.
the key aspect of that is, do you really want to make a difference, or do you want to make a living? And there are two different things. Obviously, you can make a living and maybe make more than a living in the creative field. But to begin with, are you in the industry to make a difference? Okay, so for that, I think what the most important thing is what I call hunger. And Gaurav, at this point, I also want to introduce an innovation that I have developed. It's a patented technology that I have about slide sharing, and I'm going to introduce that with my first slide. Okay, and it is a new age technology called slides. So the first, it's my patented slide sharing technology, and okay, so I need to actually patent it. Okay, so the first important thing, okay, that I look at people and their portfolios and I talk to them is, do you have hunger to make a difference and all? Because that to me is more important than talent. Talent you may have little bit, but if you keep at it, if you practice, if you see the right kind of things and the things that you like Pepper Content is doing, you follow the speakers, the case studies, the show. It can be built, it can be honed, and all this kind of stuff. But to begin with, you need hunger. My second slide is coming up. Can you see my slide? That is, I would call it humility. You know, and I think this is probably a strange word in the creative space, and but I think it's very important because right now when I talked about the creative field, and I'm talking about the commercial creative field only, obviously, is that there are two sets of people. One is when the digital field has sort of nascent, is about 10 to 12, 15 years maximum in the country, and it's grown, and a lot of people have grown in this industry, and it's all about social media or SEO content and email marketing, and now going to Web3, metaverse, NFTs, and all kind of stuff, right? So that is one kind of people. And the other industry or the other set of people are people from so-called ATL or so-called mainstream people, right? And both exist. And while the ATL population is diminishing because a lot of people sort of get old and then maybe get intimidated by the digital field and get the medicine samajh mein nahi aa raha, and then they leave the field, you know. So the ATL people also consider to exist, and I'm from that stream, right? And then on the other hand is the young blood digital native people, right? So I feel, humility is required by both sets of people, because the digital content people say, I don't, these old people, they don't know anything and all that, and I know what to do on an Instagram post, and I'll make it in half an hour. I'll write it, I'll add some stickers, and I'll make it viral, right? So that they know it and then they're very good at it, right? On the other hand, the ATL people feel, I'm calling it people is because now the digital content people, they don't know what is called brand, they don't know long term, they don't think deep. And a lot of people, the ATL set of people will think, they have picked, like they go through benchmarks globally like Webby Awards or whatever, and then usko hum chip dete hain, you know. So I hear both voices, and I think in my last assignment in a large agency, I had actually two different teams reporting into me. There was a digital creative team and there was an ATL creative team reporting into me, and then I heard what I've just said. And I felt like there were two caste systems or two castes, trying to, say we are better than the other. So therefore, I feel we need humility from the native young blood digital people to say, is there anything that I'm missing that I need to learn from the, maybe you can call them older people if you feel like better and all that. Is there something game that I'm missing? And from the ATL set of people, I think you need to also be humble and say, oh, I need to learn something. So I need to bring down and say, how do I write post copy in say 140 characters, or maybe post copy for Instagram is different from Facebook copy and what you write for Twitter, and you need to learn those skills, so I think the second thing is called humility. Okay, the question that I'm trying to address is the various skill sets required to make a difference in the creative field. And I'll bring the third point, and then we can go to the next question, and tell me if you're doing good with time. Yeah. The
Yeah.
third slide coming up is called find your voice. Okay. And I say that because we are in the creative field and we work with different kind of people, and there are brands, there are clients, and the clients also need to have their voice. It is not my voice, but it is Samsung voice, or it is Morris Garage's voice, or it is, you know uh, uh, other brands that I work on, which I need to speak. But while I'm talking about them, there is a voice that I need to create. It belongs to me. And I say that because it is very dangerous that we are in the creative field, but then we become a commodity. It is very easy that become a commodity. And what I mean by commodity is that there is no value that you will make, because at the end of the day, you need to also make a living, you need to make a career, and you need to make a lot of money, right? And all that is possible only if you don't become a commodity, but then you need to become, we don't like don'ts, so that's it, you need to become a brand, you know and then you become a brand when you bring your own voice to the table. Of course, there's a brand needs to speak, but it is your voice behind it. It is behind, it is not on the front, but slowly it's your voice behind that brand talking about it. Okay. So that's why you need to find your voice. And when you are young and you're working in different companies, you need to be exposed to different voices. There is this school and there is that school. In terms of different creative people have different voices, like I have a certain voice that I now develop, and I know, okay, this is what my school of creativity is, and then we can talk about that maybe separately, or anybody in the chat wants to ask, I can talk about it. But I think it's good when you're young to be exposed with different kind of ideas. There's an edgy idea, there's a big idea, there is a brilliant idea, there are all kind of ideas, right? So so find your own voice. It'll take some time, but just be exposed to different voices, and then but constantly ask your voice, what is the voice that I like, what who I am. And then one day you'll be comfortable with it, and then you'll also learn to make a difference. So that's my first answer to the question.
Right. So, talking about these two different school of thoughts, where there's ATL and BTL. Sorry, there is ATL, and then there is whole digital space, right? So I'm from the old school of thought, where I'm a millennial, where we were trained to aspire, for more and burn the midnight oil, and go through that whole grit, where you keep on churning to to reach that final, that one idea, the one big idea. But today there's a lot of talk about work life balance, and in people saying that we will do 8 hours a day, and the newer generation especially. So as a creative genius who's been in the industry for so long and has had such an illustrious career, what would be your advice to the younger generation, to the budding creatives?
Okay, it's a tough question, and it's a sensitive question at the same time. So I hope I'll try to be careful in my choice of words, because there is something called a culture, and then say कि मतलब ये तो इसको cancel कर दो and also. But anyway, I'm not afraid beyond a point, and I'll speak what I feel about this. I think it depends on who's asking the question. If the person asking the question, okay, he's in the field to make a living, a job, then I think it's a fair question, right? मतलब, I don't want to spend more time than I need to make a contribution, and then therefore I take some money home and back. But if the question is asked by the first person, the first question that you asked, that what are the creative skill sets required to make a difference in the creative field, I think that's a completely different question. So that question will not be asked by
That's the
this
same person.
millennial. It cannot be asked for the same question, right? Because if the moment you're asking that how can I make a difference, he's not thinking what is the price, and it's a tough word, especially in a socially sensitive era. What is the price I need to pay to make a difference, right? So, but there are, and I think one of the biggest barriers to creative people is right now this language, this work life balance. It's a very dangerous word. And then everybody is saying, I need to have work life balance, I need to work life balance. And I think when the creative people are exposed to this chatter on LinkedIn and other people and saying, they can get confused and they can get disoriented and think, oh, where is my work life balance? But a true creative person will not worry about it. It will happen on its own. And so I don't even want to talk about something called work life balance. So I'm going to talk about how can I make a difference, but in the context of the question that you asked. So I'm going to try and answer the question, and maybe if separate you have more questions I can ask. What is the work-life balance of somebody like Michelangelo? Okay, recently I fortunate enough to be in Italy, and then I saw all the massive pieces of art, David and Sistine Chapel, and all the massive things that he made. But did he have a work-life balance? Okay, I also saw Van Gogh, and then I'm not talking about cutting your ear, right? But what you can bring to the table to make a difference. Okay, and then it's not restricted to just our creative field, which is working for brands, but anybody who has a creative expression, and I include, because I used to be a sportsman, and I still love sports, and I follow people. I know somebody like Roger Federer who just retired, right? What is the work life balance you talk about, right? Monday is the World Cup, say a Wimbledon quarterfinal. Do you want him to take Saturday, Sunday, spend time with his family, and then enjoy work life balance? Or do you see him? Well, I don't know his practical routine. Maybe it's Nadal or a Djokovic or the new guy, Carlos Alcaraz. He's 18 years old, and somebody mentioned about 18 years old needs to, give 18 hours or something like that. And then people attacked him on social media, right? But somebody like Carlos Alcaraz, I don't know how to pronounce his surname, but Carlos, definitely the guy who won US Open. How much time he would be dedicating to win the US Open? So I'm thinking it's bizarre that people are hijacking this conversation, and I think creative people should be protected from this chatter. It could be relevant for many people who are in the business to make a career, and then climb the ladder by doing many things. But how can you make a difference if you're worried about work-life balance? Work-life balance, I think, can be achieved. It is possible, and I think maybe I can say truthfully, hand on my heart, that I've probably been able to manage. But I've contributed. I've given up a lot of waking up hours and sleepless nights to produce some of the can lines that you see there in the corner. But it's not possible to have, oh my gosh, I need to go home at 6:30 and then have these. But on the other hand, there are sports people, and therefore they could be in the creative field, who cannot deal with the pressure. There was Mike Trescothick, and there's another tennis player. There was a show about him on Netflix or Amazon, I don't remember. Then who can't deal with that pressure? Then they say, okay, TK, I don't want to play the big finals, big matches. I'll play my game at a slower level, and you retire and you play the game. So if you don't want to make a difference, TK, I cannot deal with the pressure of the brands or the clients and the constant feedback. If you don't enjoy that game, then it's okay. Then you have to be honest to yourself and say, then I cannot deal with it. But you cannot say, I want work life balance and I want to win a canned line and a canned Grand Prix. That doesn't happen. Well, it can happen in a fluke, but it's not going to happen on a
Right.
regular.
So, since there is a lot of conversation about work-life balance, within advertising industry or within a creative industry itself, do you think the industry is misguided in identifying what motivates the creative minds? I mean,
Especially, yes, because I think we were fortunate enough to be born in an era when we had bosses who could we had spent time with them, and we could just watch them, hang around with them, and then learned a lot of things. So I think that luxury is not there for the young talent these days. So I think the industry, yes. So I sort of attacked people who crave for work-life balance, but I think the responsibility is actually belongs to the companies, the corporates, the senior management, HR departments, to find out what can we do to create an environment, a safe environment for this talent to have an elbow room. I like elbow room, and flexibility to so that the ideas can be produced, nurtured, and be there till you sell the idea to the client, because clients have their own concerns, and you need to take care of their concerns. It's not you're not living in an isolated world where you crack an idea and you think that is the best, because there are realities, there are brands, there are brand guidelines, budgets, and deadlines, and all this need to be taken care of. So if the agencies understand this reality, understand what the creative people need, then I think it is a win-win game. Otherwise, as you said rightly, it's a good question. That the agencies are probably struggling because they also don't know what this young talent, because the management is still is with senior people. So to find a nice place where both can happen.
right. Okay, so we're running out of time. I'm just going to ask you one last question. What advice do you want to give to the aspiring creative minds of tomorrow? Any last thoughts?
Okay, for that I'll quickly create my last slide, and that is the advantage of this latest innovation and slide sharing. The last word is called just do. Creative is a verb, and we need to constantly producing, whether it is for brands, but on the other side, you need to constantly do something. Either you write something, or you draw something, or you create a blog, whatever, you need to constantly create. So I think the time is up. I'll stop now. But
Right.
do.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Very rightly said. Right. Thanks a lot, Emmanuel, for your insights. Uh, Tanya, over to you. I think we have had a very good session.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I think my favorite part was the hunger little thing. I took a picture also. I think I'm posted all over my
Okay.
social media. Love it. No, I think really insightful session. I loved it personally, and thank you so much for coming on board with us. This is me just closing on this session and inviting everybody that we have here to our next panel discussion on building creative campaigns for traditional organizations. Emmanuel, you should hop on too if you have some time.
Sure.
Great. So just moving
Thank
on
you,
to the
guys.
next
Thank
sessions.
you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Emmanuel.
you so
Bye.
much, Emmanuel. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you, guys.